Hi, my name is Dana Scheider, and in this video I want to try to address a question I hear time and again. Why is math so hard? A lot of people really struggle with math, and it doesn't help that it can be difficult to identify exactly what you're missing and what's making it difficult for you, and that can make it hard to fill in those gaps and get caught up. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that math doesn't have to be hard. Here are a few of the reasons that you could be struggling with math. You could be dealing with insufficient time for teachers to help individual students, unqualified teachers, an ineffective pedagogical approach, gaps in your prerequisite knowledge, or an ineffective study approach. All of these are problems that can be confronted and overcome. This video is intended for math students at all levels who are struggling. These sources of difficulty are the same whether you're studying arithmetic, pre-algebra, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, statistics, calculus, linear algebra, you name it. So, if you're worried that this video may be intended for people at a different level than you, don't worry about it. It's intended for people at all levels. Without further ado, I want to move on to the single most important thing that I want you to take away from this video. I know that I covered this before, but it bears repeating. Math is not hard because you lack the aptitude. It's hard because you're encountering some problems that can be overcome. I know this from personal experience. When I was in high school, I hated math and I was afraid of math. I was afraid to take classes in college because I was afraid I wouldn't pass. When I got over that fear, I was able to teach myself the first semester of pre-calculus, ace the second semester of pre-calculus, and the first semester of calculus, and subsequently teach myself advanced calculus. So obviously the problem was not that I lacked the aptitude. I obviously had the aptitude, but there was something in my schooling that was not working for me. And this could just as easily be the case for you. The first problem I want to talk about is insufficient teacher time. Increasingly in high school or any K-12 and university environments, teachers are dealing with larger and larger class sizes, and that makes it hard for them to look at each of their students individually and figure out what those people are struggling with or need help with and exactly how to best reach those people. That's a problem because it's not really possible to take a one-size-fits-all approach, and it can in fact be counterproductive. But insufficient teacher time means that teachers don't have really much of another choice. Another problem is unqualified teachers. Teachers have to take a praxis exam before they can get a teacher's license, and it covers all subjects, and I can tell you that math section is intense. When I saw the math section of the praxis exam for the first time, I couldn't believe what I was seeing because it was so rigorous in its treatment of arithmetic that I could hardly understand it. And this was after I had aced calculus. So this is not the problem that I'm going to talk about because obviously the exam wants teachers to have the theoretical underpinnings that they need to teach math effectively. The problem is, let me put it this way. Do you remember all of the material that you had to learn for an exam you took 5 years ago or 10 years ago? The answer to that is probably no. And it's true for teachers too. If they took that exam a long time ago and haven't continually exposed themselves to the material since then, and haven't maintained a personal interest in math that causes them to keep working at it regularly, then they're also not going to remember how to do that, and it can be detrimental for their students. It's possible to do math without a strong theoretical background. It's not possible to teach math without a strong theoretical background. The reason is because having a strong theoretical background allows you to think about the concepts in different ways and communicate them to different learning styles without sacrificing rigor. Ineffective pedagogical approaches are another problem that people have. Education these days, especially in this country at least, is given to fads. These fads change from time to time as a result of political pressures, sometimes every couple years, and it's not always a smooth transition from one to the other, and this can leave students with gaps in their knowledge. It's important to know that these approaches don't always have to do with your teacher, and the teacher may be as frustrated as you are. Increasingly, as there's a lot of standardized testing and teachers have to teach to those tests, administrators hand them down material that they are required to use to teach their classes, and even if they realize it's ineffective, they may not have a choice. Working with a private tutor is the best way to counteract this problem. But the problem is that tutors are expensive. Good tutors are always expensive. And so if you can't afford a tutor, what I recommend is seeking out your teacher or another teacher at your school and asking them for help on an individual basis. Teachers don't have time to coach every individual student, but not every individual student is asking for help. So if you're worried about inconveniencing your teacher or taking up too much of their time, you can trust them to draw that boundary for themselves. Regardless of what you might hear on the news, teachers don't become teachers because of cushy paychecks, cushy retirement packages, 3 months of summer every year. Teachers have a rough lot, and it's getting rougher. It's difficult to get a job teaching. It's difficult to keep jobs teaching. Teachers go into teaching because they want to help students. And when they have these large class sizes and are dealing with rigid curriculum that's not effective, they're frustrated because that gets in the way of their goal of helping students. Helping students is rewarding for teachers, and they will appreciate the opportunity to help you if you go to them asking for help. If they don't have time, then they'll let you know that, but most teachers will be more than happy to help you any way they can. Gaps in prerequisite knowledge are the single biggest problem people have in math. It's a big problem because math builds constantly on earlier materials, so if you're not comfortable with material that you learned before, you're going to have a bad time, as the meme says, when you move forward. Gaps in material are the most common source of math difficulties. That bears repeating. Typical gaps for students at various levels are arithmetic, the concepts of variables and functions, and the concepts of composite functions and inverse functions. Arithmetic. Let me repeat that. Arithmetic problems are the most common source of struggles in advanced math. So people can push through a lot of years of math and still be bad at arithmetic, but that is going to cause you more and more problems as you move forward. So any of the things on this list, if you have encountered this material previously and you're not totally comfortable with it now, I guarantee you that your math skills will improve and your problems will lessen if you get really comfortable with these. It is worth the time, it's worth the investment if you need private tutoring. Let's look at a few ways to correct ineffective study techniques, because ineffective study techniques are another really common problem, and they're the easiest one to remedy because they're something that you're doing that you have the power to change. The first recommendation I have is to be patient. You need to focus on staying in the moment and figuring out what you don't understand and why. If you're focusing on having an exam in 2 days, if you're focusing on how you're going to learn future material, you're not going to have an easy time learning the material that you're trying to learn right now. If you can't figure out exactly what it is you don't understand, what I recommend is explaining to yourself out loud or in writing, or explaining to a friend how to do the problem. Eventually you're going to get to a point where you can't explain it anymore because you don't understand. And what I find is when I do this, my brain a lot of the time will literally say to me, well, that doesn't make sense because ... And when your brain does that, that's great, because that tells you what you need to work on and exactly what you're not getting. So once you get that, then you can go back, look at that, and correct it before moving forward. Relatedly, it's important not to rush. I know that this is really difficult since people tend to have an incentive to rush. You need to learn things for a class. You need to be prepared for a test. You can't spend 4 hours studying math each day and have a social life. But it's better to take your time learning a few things well than to try to cram everything. Remember that the future material is going to be easier if you're comfortable with this today, if you don't turn what you're currently working on into one of those gaps. So focus on learning the concepts one by one instead of trying to get through the material, and that will be very helpful for you learning math. You'll need to find more problems to do. I know that that sounds like not very much fun, but if you're in high school or lower, your book probably doesn't actually have enough problems for you to practice effectively. There are a few sources online of more problems. You can get books from the library, and those should really help because a lot of the time, if you only are working on, say, 5 problems for each concept that you've covered in a given section, that's not enough to really get those into your head. Finally, you can ask a teacher, tutor, or family member who's good at math to explain concepts you aren't getting. Here's the things I want you to remember. Math is hard because something is going wrong, not because you can't do it. Once you learn what's going wrong, you can learn to compensate. You can learn techniques to overcome the problems we've discussed. If you're like me, and don't say you're not, because you very well might be, and I would have said that 10 years ago, you may actually be good at math and could even come to enjoy it. But you could be also studying under conditions not appropriate to your learning style or simply not conducive to learning at all. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to ask them in the comments. I do accept video requests, so if you come across any of those gaps in your knowledge or things that you're struggling with and I don't currently have a video with it, go ahead and comment or send me a private message and ask me to make another video, and I probably will accept your request. I also offer tutoring in the Portland metro area. That's in Portland, Oregon. And you can visit me online at my new blog at http://danatutorsmath.blogspot.com. Subscribe if you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching, and I hope it's been helpful.